On the 15th of October 2021, the MP, Sir David Amess, was stabbed to death during a constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea. A review into his murder found his killer was a follower of Islamic State and had also been released from the Prevent anti-terror programme too quickly. Well, today his daughter Katie has called the government's decision to reject a public inquiry into his killing an insult and a betrayal of her father's memory. Katie is here with us. She's joined by the family spokesperson, Rad Saiger, as well. Thank you both for being with us, first of all. Katie, it must be re-traumatising for you to have to go through these multiple media interviews.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say that, we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
It's been a big day. The Home Secretary rejected a public inquiry into the death of your father. What's your reaction to that?
Utter disbelief, and we're completely heartbroken all over again, and we just feel betrayed, ignored, let down, and also angry, because why are we having to fight so hard for an inquiry? This inquiry should have happened immediately after his death. That was in 2021, it's now 2025. I asked the Conservative government, I've asked the Labour government, nobody wants to help me, and I just don't understand why.
Can I ask, how did you find out the news that they'd rejected your call for a public inquiry?
So the Prime Minister asked us to have a meeting with him. And so we were thinking, oh, this is, something positive. And then Rad said, would it be okay if we bought press? And they said no. So that's when I started to think something funny is going on, because they just announced Nottingham and they had press there. So I started to think maybe this isn't going to be a good outcome. So then Rad said, OK, we understand we're not allowed press. Could you just explain what the meeting is going to be about? And that is the response that we got back.
Yeah. And how did you feel when you heard it?
My whole body started shaking with just anger and just completely bereft all over again, that I was reading these same words over and over again, pretending that the paper review that they did years ago answered all the questions, when it answered no questions. There was no investigation, nobody was interviewed. All they did was go through timelines and email logs and make guesses as to what was going on. The fact that they're still insinuating that I should be happy with that and go away when they immediately launched an inquiry into Southport, it's just utter disbelief. And then, of course, floods of tears, and then having to tell my mum, check your emails, we're not getting an inquiry, and it's just, we're heartbroken.
You mentioned there the kind of paper inquiry that you said, and it is important for me to put the government's side to this, right? So Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, said it's hard to see how an inquiry would be able to go beyond what has been reviewed in the trial, the Prevent Learning review, the coroner's report, as well as Lord Anderson and Essex Police's forthcoming conclusions. I mean, I guess that is what they're saying, that these things have been looked into previously. The Prevent Learning review recently published. The coroner, for example, decided not to resume an inquest after the criminal trial because there were no additional questions that could be answered through an investigation of this kind that had not already been considered as part of the trial.
First of all, the coroner was considering doing an inquest, but after the government wrote to him a 7-page document, he changed his mind. So that was government interference. And I know there's been a legal trial, and we know who did the murder, but we don't know why he was allowed to do it and why he was allowed to go back into the community for 6 years to carry on planning this attack. The Prevent Learning review that they're talking about, if everything had been fixed in 2022 or whenever they did that review, why did Southport then happen a year and a half later? If all those questions had been answered and there was nothing to see here, how comes the same thing happened? Because it's the same profile of person, a lone person, self-radicalising. The members of the public are reporting him, they're taking them out for coffee, the person saying, I'm not a terrorist, and then they're just letting him go. That review that they did means nothing. They did no investigations, they just looked at paperwork. I don't know if Rad, if you want to...
Yes, Sophie, so none of what's come before answers the family's questions as to how Harbour Ali was allowed to carry on and do what he did. So the other question, of course, is who made the decision to release him? And more importantly, what's going to be done to make sure this never happens again? As Katie says, if everything has been done that could have been done, we can learn no more, why on earth are they announcing an inquiry into Southport? And the two cases are absolutely identical. We completely support the Southport families, but if you're going to have an inquiry into Southport, you can't then say to the Amess family, oh no, there's nothing to see here, there's nothing more to do. So we've been through the government's case, and with all due respect to them, we think they're wrong, and we will be going to see the Prime Minister on Wednesday to explain why we think that they've got this wrong and to invite them to reconsider.
You said that you thought there was government interference with the coroner. I don't know.
So basically the coroner said, OK, I'm open to resuming the inquest. He wrote to the perpetrator, he wrote to Essex Police, and he wrote to the government. The perpetrator said, I don't care, do what you want. Essex Police said, can we settle out of court? And the government wrote a 7-page document claiming that they were wholly neutral into resuming the inquest, but everything within that document was to persuade the coroner not to resume the inquest.
It's quite typical after full criminal trials, and the difference between Sir David's case in Southport is that his killer pleaded not guilty, so there was a full trial. So usually governments don't like to go into things again if there's been a full trial. But the criminal trial did not look into the events that led up to that terrible day.
So this is the failure of PREVENT, effectively, that you're talking about.
And the police.
Yeah, exactly. And the family have huge concerns about the PREVENT program generally, but more specifically, how do you have somebody like Ali Harbour Ali, who's known to the authorities, just be taken for a cup of coffee and then released?
I know this is I totally understand the desire and why you want to do this, right? I absolutely get it. Some may say, look, if the cases are similar to Southport, because there were the failures of PREVENT, then that public inquiry will look at the same issues.
We'd be completely open. So if the government were to announce a wider review into into PREVENT, we would happily join that wider review. But what they've done is they've announced an inquiry into Southport, and they've said that this family can't have its own inquiry. So it just doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
Well, initially Yvette Cooper in October said that she would consider us being involved in that. And then all these months later, she just sends us a letter and says no.
Can I ask you what your dad was like?
Oh, he was absolutely amazing. Kind, compassionate, friendly. He cared about everybody. It didn't matter what their political beliefs were. He just wanted to help people. And he spent his whole life trying to help people. And if he was here now and this had happened to one of his colleagues, he'd be the first person fighting for them. So it just leaves a massive hole in our lives that he's not here. But I'm just trying to take strength from him and think about what he would want me to do. And it's just giving me the courage to speak up and to try and stop this happening to somebody else.
I mean, you can see your love for your dad,
Yeah.
coming through. I think he had, how many kids? Was it 5 kids?
Yeah.
So, big family man? Or?
Big family man, loads of animals, just loved everybody, very religious. Many people wrote to us after his passing and said that he was their best friend. And I thought, well, how many best friends can you have? But that's how people felt about him. He was friends with everybody. It didn't matter your race, your religion, your economic status. If you needed help, he was going to help you.
You've done your dad proud.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming and talking to us
Thank you.
today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.